The Language of Form and Color, Wassily Kandinsky. Excerpt from On the Spiritual in Art, Wassily Kandinsky, public domain. Nothing is absolute. Form composition based on such relativity is dependent on 1. The variability of composition of forms, and 2. The variability of each particular form down to the smallest. Every form is as sensitive as a cloud of smoke. The slightest obvious change in each of its component parts alters it completely. In fact, it is perhaps easier to obtain the same note or harmony by means of various forms than by repetition of the same form. A truly exact repetition cannot be produced. As long as we are susceptible to the composition as a whole, this fact is mainly of theoretical importance. When we perceive a finer and stronger feeling through the use of abstract forms, which will accept no material interpretation, this fact will gain more in practical significance. On one hand, the problems of art will increase, yet at the same time the abundance of form will grow as the quantity and quality of form expression increase. At the same time, the question of distortion in drawing will automatically be abandoned and replaced by another one of much higher artistic import. How far is the inner appeal of a particular form concealed, and how far does it give full expression? This changed viewpoint will lead to further greater possibilities of expression, because concealing or veiling plays an enormous part in art. The combination of the veiled and the fully expressed will suggest a new possibility of leitmotifs in form composition. Without similar development, the composition of forms would remain impossible. Anyone who cannot experience the inner appeal of form, the material and particularly the abstract, will always consider such compositions exceedingly arbitrary. In this case, the aimless alterations in form arrangement on the surface appears an empty play with forms. Once more we arrive at the same measure and principle, which we have thus far encountered everywhere and proved as the only one that is purely artistic, free of all that is unessential, and the principle of the inner necessity. When, for example, the features of parts of the body are changed or distorted for artistic reasons, we are confronted not only with the pure question of art in painting, but also with anatomy, which hampers the work of painting and forces artists' attention to the consideration of unimportant factors. In our case, however, everything unimportant is automatically dropped and only the essential remains, the artistic aim. The arbitrary, but in reality strictly directed possibilities of altering forms is one of the sources of an endless array of purely artistic creations. The adaptability of individual forms and their innermost organic variations, as well as their direction in the picture, movement, their inclination toward the material or the abstract individual forms, the creation of the one dominant form amidst a group of forms, the compilation of the individual forms with the form groups creating the form of the entire picture, the principle of harmony or disharmony of all parts mentioned, that is, the conjunction and juxtaposition of individual forms, the hindering of one form by another, as well as the impulse, acceptance and disintegration of the individual form. Identical treatment of various forms, groups, combining the veiled and openly expressed appeals, the use of rhythmical or unrhythmical treatments on the same surface, The combination of the abstract form as a pure geometric form, plane or involved, in forms beyond geometrical designation. The combination of continuity or repellence, either stronger or weaker. All these are elements which lead to the possibility of a purely artistic counterpoint and achieve this counterpoint. This will be the counterpoint in the art of black and white, so long as color is excluded. Color, which contains material for counterpoint combining endless possibilities, will, when combined with design, lead to great artistic counterpoint, where painting will achieve composition and, as a truly pure art, will become a divine instrument. The same infallible guidance will carry it to the towering heights, the principle of inner necessity. This inner necessity, which consists of three mystical elements, is brought about through three mystical ways. 1. Every artist, as a creator, has to express his own personality. So the element of personality. 2. Every artist, as a child of his age, is impelled to express the spirit of his age. Element of style composed from the message of the epoch and the language of the nation as long as the nation continues to exist. 3. Every artist, as a servant of art, is impelled to present art as such, element of pure, eternal art, which is constant among all people, nations and ages, and is evident in the works of every artist, every nation and every epoch, as the main element of art, irrespective of time and space. It is necessary to penetrate these first two elements with the spiritual eye in order to visualize the third. Then one will see that a rudely carved column of an Indian temple is expressed of the same spirit that inspires the most modern painting. There has always been much talk of personality in art. One will here discuss the subject of coming style. Though these questions are of utmost importance after a few hundred or 1,000 years, they will lose most of their importance and magnitude. Only the third element, pure and eternal art, will remain forever. It does not lose its power by the passing of time. Indeed, it constantly gains in strength. An Egyptian plastic probably moves us more today than its contemporaries, as it was too closely attached to them, in view of their knowledge of their period and the personality of their times. Today, we hear about pure expression of eternal artistry. Similarly, the more a modern work has the first two elements, the easier, of course, it will find its way to the soul of its contemporaries. Furthermore, the more the third element exists in the modern work, the more the first will be submerged, and the harder it will be for it to find the way to the soul of its contemporaries. For this reason, it is sometimes necessary for many centuries to pass before the melody of the third element in the work of an artist betokens the greatness both of the work and of the artist. These three mystic elements are the three necessary factors in a work of art, so closely connected with each other, interwoven, they are the expression of that uniformity. In spite of this, the two former elements incorporate period and space, while in the pure and eternal artistry, which is beyond time and space, this creates a comparatively non-transparent shell. The process of development in art, so to speak, of the separation of the pure and eternal art from the element of personality as well as from the element of an apo. Thus, these two elements, while cooperative, are equally retarding forces. The personal and periodic style creates many precise forms in every apo. In spite of the apparent major difference, they are so closely related organically that they can be designated as one single form. Their inner sound is finally but one major chord. These two elements are of a subjective nature. Every apo strives to reflect itself, to express its life. Likewise, the artist wishes to express himself and chooses only forms which are sympathetic to his soul. Gradually, the style of the apo shapes and takes on a certain exterior, subjective form. The pure and eternal art, on the other hand, is the objective element, which uses the subjective to become understood. The unavoidable desire of the objective to express itself is the power which is here designated as inner necessity, and which employs one generally subjective form today and another tomorrow. It is the constant, tireless lever, the spring, which constantly drives onward. The spirit moves on, and for this reason today's inner laws of harmony are tomorrow's exterior laws, which, in their further application, live through necessity, which has become external. The inner spiritual power of art uses the form of today as a stepping stone to its progress. In short, the working of the inner necessity and therefore the development of art is an ever-advancing expression of the eternally objective in the temporary subjective. On the other hand, it is also fighting the subjective through the objective. For example, the form recognized today is a conquest of yesterday's inner necessity, which, on a certain exterior level of liberation, has actually remained free. This present liberty was ensured by strife and, as usual, appears to be the last word for many. The canon of this limited liberty is that an artist can use any form he wishes for his expression, so long as he remains in touch with nature from which his form is derived. This requirement, however, as all its predecessors, is only temporary. It is the exterior expression of today's outer necessity. From the point of view of the inner necessity, such a limitation should not be made, and the artist may restrict himself fully to the inner basis, which is deprived of the outer limitation, and which may therefore be defined as follows. The artist may employ any form to express himself. Finally, we see, and this is of utmost importance for all times and particularly for today, that a deliberate search for personality and style, and incidentally for the nation's element, is not only impossible but likewise does most certainly lack the great meaning which today is attributed to it. We observe that the general relationship of art, which is not weakened by the passing of time, but constantly and progressively strengthened, is not an exterior relationship in outward form, but is lodged in that mystic content of art, clinging to a school, searching for a line of development that insists on a work following certain principles, and the means of expression of a period can only lead to misunderstanding, misconception, obscurity, and mutilation. The artist should be blind to the importance of recognition or non-recognition, and deaf to the teachings and demands of the time. His eye should be directed to his inner life, and his ear should hearken the words of the inner necessity. then he will resort with equal ease to every means and achieve this end. This is the only way to express the mystic need. All means are sacred when called upon by innermost necessity. All means are a sin and lacking virtue if they do not come from this source. On the other hand, though we could weave infinite theories along these lines today, a detailed theory is premature. In art, theory never precedes practice. Here everything, particularly in the beginning, is a matter of feeling. Only through feeling, particularly in the beginning, is it possible to achieve what is artistically right. Through this general construction can be achieved in a purely theoretical manner. It is this feeling which remains the true soul of creation and also its being, never conceived and never found by theory, only instilled into the creation spontaneously. Since art affects feeling, it can only be effective through feeling. The surest proportion, the most careful weighing and balancing will never bring about a proper result based on mental calculations and deductions. Such proportions cannot be figured out and such scales cannot be ready-made. They are not outside of the artist but within him, and consist of what may also be termed a feeling of limitation and self-restriction, an artistic tact, qualities which are inherent to the artist and which are increased through enthusiasm to ingenious revelation. This is the sense in which the basic fundamentals of paintings, as foretold by Goethe, may be understood. Such a grammar of painting at present can be guessed at, and should it ever be achieved, will not depend so much on physical means, which have been tried and are still tried today, cubism, as the rules of inner necessity, which we might well term the necessaria of the soul. Thus we see that at the basis of every small and great problem in painting there must be this inner necessity. The road along which we, most luckily, are moving today leads away from the exterior towards the opposite basis, which is the main basis of inner necessity. The body is strengthened and developed by exercise. So is the spirit. As the neglected body grows weakened and impotent, so does the spirit. The feeling inherent to the artist is the talent, as spoken of in the Gospel, which should not be buried. The artist who does not utilize his gift is like the slave who was worthless and lazy. For this reason, it is not only unharmful but absolutely essential for the artist to know the starting point for such exercises. This starting point, weighing the inner value of materials on the great objective scale, is in our case the examination of color, which on the whole must equally have its effect upon all mankind. It is therefore unnecessary to engage in the finer valuations of color, for the elementary representation of simple color will suffice.